My House of Horrors Chapter 841 to 850. There might be information about the owner of the school in the school's archive room, and there might be a mirror that led to the blood-red world hidden in the library. The art room in the lab was where Chen Ge had promised Zhou Tu to go. Where should we go first? Chen Ge turned to Zhou Tu. I know where the art club is, and I've seen the scene in your dream. I can take you there at any time, but are you really prepared to regain your memory? Zhou Tu had not communicated much with Chen Ge, so when Chen Ge suddenly asked him that question, he did not know what to do. Before he regained his memory, he had wanted to know what he had forgotten, but after seeing what had happened to Zhang Ju and Wang Yicheng, he hesitated. Are you prepared to face the past? If your memory is not awakened, you're just an unimportant student at this school. You can forget about anything and live a peaceful and beautiful day. Once your memory is awakened, you will be tracked down by the school, and there will be no turning back. Chen Ge kept asking Zhou Tu questions. It was a test. Of all the members, Zhou Tu was the most opinionated. I've thought about it, and I think it's better for me to regain my memory. Without the past, no matter how comfortable my life is, I'm just lying to myself. Zhou Tu's eyes moved to Zhang Ju and Wang Yicheng. I wonder if my real appearance will scare me to tears. Why don't you think about it a little longer? Zhang Ju's voice was hoarse. He turned his burnt face away. You give off a very uncomfortable feeling. The real you must be a scary monster. Zhou Tu was speechless and did not know how to answer. His eyes wandered, and his heart seemed to waver. We'll go to the school's archive room first. You have enough time to think about it. Chen Ge patted Zhou Tu's shoulder lightly. Don't feel pressured. I will respect any choice you make. Thank you. Zhou Tu lowered his head to think. Zhang Ju nudged Chen Ge. His real appearance should be very scary. If he can regain his memory, no matter what we want to do next, it will be easier. Everyone has their own choice. I won't interfere. Didn't you help us awaken our memories so that we can find our past and increase our strength so that we can help you achieve your goal? Zhang Ju was confused. He remembered clearly what Chen Ge had said earlier. They were just helping each other and making use of each other. I once saw a saying in a book. A rose doesn't ask why, nor does it ask for anything in return. It blooms because it blooms. Although I can't be that selfless, at least I've experienced the pain you've gone through. Seeing you reminds me of myself. Chen Ge looked at the other members seriously. There is one more thing I want to reiterate. Our relationship is not one of mutual exploitation, but a win-win situation. Mutual respect is just the foundation. Hearing Chen Ge's voice, for a moment, all the ghosts seemed to have forgotten that the man before them was just a normal person. Perhaps he just hadn't recovered his memories. Zhang Ju and Zhu Long nodded and followed behind Chen Ge. Wang Yicheng opened his eyes, which were filled with tears of blood. He seemed to recognize Chen Ge even more. Zhou Tu, who walked at the back, seemed to be deep in thought, and his eyes slowly turned determined. Returning to the corridor, Chen Ge only took a few steps when he felt something was wrong. There was a thick stench in the air. He had smelled this stench in the lab before. A bad feeling appeared in his heart. The further Chen Ge walked, the more pressure he felt. It was like he was walking at the bottom of a lake, and the chill came from all directions. Those inverted monsters have appeared again. Chen Ge did not lower his head to look. Things had already happened. Lowering his head would only mess up his judgment. He needed to leave the education block as soon as possible. Standing next to Zhang Ju, Chen Ge narrowed his eyes, and he whispered, "Did you see the monsters in the corridor?" Monsters? Zhang Ju stared at the corridor. The blood on his body slid down his jacket. There seems to be something, but they don't appear to be able to harm us. As he said that, Zhang Ju saw his hair float upward like an invisible baby was tugging at his hair in the dark. Small wounds started to appear on Zhang Ju and Wang Yicheng's bodies. The monsters had been attracted by the two of them. I can't see them, so how did they harm me? The scars on Zhang Ju's face kept leaking blood. Blood vessels danced on his body. Even though his memory had awakened, he had not learned how to use this power. If we invert our vision, we can see them, but I don't suggest you do that. Why? Because after you see them, you'll feel even more despair. Chen Ge signaled for them to leave through the corridor. It was unclear whether the monsters were attacking Zhang Ju and Wang Yicheng on instinct or someone else's orders. If it was the latter, it would be more troublesome. The stench thickened, and the wounds on Zhang Ju and Wang Yicheng's bodies increased. It was worth noting that with every wound on their bodies, A very thin black thread would crawl into their bodies. They looked like curses. The group had just reached the corner of the third floor when Wang Yicheng could not hold on anymore. His footsteps became weaker and weaker. I feel like many things are biting at my body, and my memory is becoming blurry again. Mr. Bai, this is not good. There are more dirty things downstairs, Zhou Tu whispered. Zhou Tu whispered. They had just arrived at the third floor when they smelled a pungent stench. What was even stranger was that the stench was coming from right beside them. Lowering his head, Zhou Tu looked up like how he had picked up the cleaver earlier to look at the spot where the foul odor was coming from. In the empty space between him and Wang Yicheng, there was an inverted human face. The monster's shirt was stuck to the flesh. It appeared to have no skin, and the veins were pulsing under the shirt. The blood stuck to the shirt and dyed the whole shirt red. Wang Yicheng, that thing is right in front of you, Zhou Tu screamed. His memory had not awakened, so when he saw this, he almost fell down the stairs. I told you not to look. What the eyes don't see, the heart won't be bothered. Chen Ge carried Wang Yicheng on his back and stepped on the spot where the stench was thickest. Then, he rushed down the stairs. Zhou Tu held his chest. The spot where Chen Ge had stepped on was the monster's head. Okay, I understand. When they reached the second floor, the foul odor filled the corridor. Zhu Long, whose memory had been shaken, became the monster's target. Zhang Ju could still hold on, but Zhu Long and Wang Yicheng could not. They had to rely on Chen Ge and Zhou Tu to drag them down. Things were getting worse. Zhou Tu was also targeted by the monsters, and the first wound appeared on his finger. Mr. Bai, what do we do now? Chen Ge did not have a better solution. All he could do was grit his teeth. Even if everyone was bitten by the monsters and lost their ability to move, he had to bring them all out. The stench rushed into their nostrils, and it almost made them faint. When Chen Ge carried Wang Yicheng, he was about to reach the corner of the first floor when a sharp pain came from his chest. With a stumble, Chen Ge almost tripped to the ground. He lowered his head to look, and there was a sharp nail that had pierced through his chest. The curse of room 413? He immediately realized something and turned to look at his shadow. The shadow that was supposed to be normal was twisting and twisting like the person hiding inside was suffering from extreme pain. Even he was attacked? The members had reached their limit. They were covered in wounds, and they looked scary. The exit is right before us. Don't stop. Chen Ge had a strong will, and he had gotten used to pain. Pulling out the nail, Chen Ge ran as fast as he could. Even if he took one more step, he would be one step closer to hope. Plop! Zhou Tu, who was carrying Zhu Long, tripped on the stairs. His right hand was covered in wounds, and it looked like it was going to split open. My hand that holds the brush when I draw. It was already very difficult for Chen Ge to bring one person out, and it was impossible for him to bring a few more. Hang in there, we're almost at the first floor. His legs felt like they were filled with lead, and every step felt heavy. The stench on the first floor was thicker than on the second floor. More monsters were waiting for them there. Other than Chen Ge, everyone had lost all hope. However, at that moment, the stench in the air suddenly lightened like someone had lured some of the monsters away. This is our chance. Chen Ge grabbed Zhou Tu and carried Wang Yicheng as he ran as fast as he could. When they reached the first floor, he saw a black shadow standing at the other end of the corridor. The person's build was very similar to Chang Ji. There was a red glow in his left eye, and his shirt was bleeding. He seemed to be holding something in his hand. Chang Ji, Chen Ge shouted directly, but the other party did not respond. He turned around and left, and the stench in the corridor lightened. He lured the monsters away. In Chen Ji's memory, Chang Ji was weak and cowardly. He was very different from the shadow that he saw earlier. He only entered the door several seconds earlier than I did. What happened to him? The figure had lured away most of the monsters. Chen Ge quickly led the club members away from the education block. Teacher Bai, what happened to those monsters just now? Why did he have to reverse his vision to see them? Also, why did they only attack Wang Yicheng and Zhang Ju and not you? Zhou Tu collapsed to the ground. He could feel the stench seeping into his body. Those monsters are probably used by the school to punish the students. It's even possible that they were once the students who broke the school rules. Chen Ge did not expect the monsters to not even be afraid of a red specter. They had lost their rationality and were a bunch of complete madmen. The school's owner wants to create a beautiful paradise behind the door. You've been reminded of the past, and that goes against his original intention. Naturally, he will target you. Chen Ge inspected Wang Nicheng and Zhang Ju's bodies. The black threads had already crawled into their wounds. Getting close to the wounds, he could smell a faded stench. Be careful. Those monsters might be trying to turn you into their kind. Standing outside the education block, Chen Ge used his yin-yang vision to look around, but he did not see the shadow that had saved him. If he really is Chang Ji-yu, why hasn't he come to find me? Is this not the time to meet him? Or could it be that he's already been targeted? Chen Ge did not communicate much with Chang Ji-yu. He needed to guess Chang Gu's thoughts before he could make the right choice. It's good to have someone to help me. Chen Ge helped Wang Nicheng up. Come, we'll go to the office building now. The school's archives should be there. The office building on the western campus was very close to the wall. Standing at the top of the building, one could see both campuses. The monsters that I've seen at this school can be divided into a few categories. Normal specters and lingering spirits. Normal red specters, the white-robed managers on the western campus, and the monsters on the eastern campus with their heads facing down. Other than them, the most dangerous ones are the teachers and hostile managers of this school. We're going to the office building, so there's a high chance we'll run into them. We have to be careful. It was not the first time that Chen Ge had done something like that, but for the other members, they were not used to it. Mr. Bai, aren't you a teacher as well? Don't you think I'm dangerous? Chen Ge did not even turn around. He answered casually as he led the way into the office building. He had been to the office building on the western campus before, but to his surprise, the architectural style of the two campuses was so different. The office building on the western campus was clean and tidy, but the office building on the eastern campus felt very pressurized. The ground had not been cleaned for a long time, and there were muddy footprints all over it. The walls were scratched, and the white paint had turned to a light yellow. There were large patches of mold. The teachers on the eastern campus usually work here. Zhou Tu could not believe it. At this school, the teacher's responsibility is not to educate you but to manage you. They spend most of their time with the students, and the office building is just a place with symbolic meaning. Chen Ge tried to push the door of one of the offices. The wooden door was not locked, and it opened easily. The facilities inside the room were very old, and they looked like they had been there for many years. I've been here before. I know where the archives room is, Zhang Ju said coldly. Ever since he recovered his memory, he had become less talkative. When did you come here? Zhou Tu was quite afraid of the current Zhang Ju, so he subconsciously lowered his voice when he spoke. Before I was tricked by Chang Wenyu, I snuck into the archives room to find out what is going on with this school. Zhang Ju walked at the front. Follow me closely. This place makes me very uncomfortable. It might be hiding something very dangerous. It was unknown whether the monster inside the office had sensed Zhang Ju or for some other reason, but they did not run into any danger along the way, and they successfully reached the third floor. This is the archives room. We'll leave after we find what we want. Don't stay for too long. I have a feeling that there are other people inside the building. Zhang Ju pulled open the door to the archives room. There were several rusted metal cabinets and 4 rows of wooden bookshelves. A moldy smell permeated the room. Chen Ge was the first to enter the room with his hand over his nose and mouth. The wooden bookshelf looked old, and when placed next to the rusted filing cabinets, there was a strange sense of dissonance. These bookshelves and cabinets seemed to belong to different schools. Chen Ge took out a random document from the wooden bookshelf, but probably due to the poor preservation environment, the folder broke when he used too much force. Mothballs, damn, these documents don't seem to have received any attention from the school. Chen Ge carefully opened the folder, and the content confused him. The donor's gratitude list. How come this piece of paper looks so familiar? Quote. Chen Ge looked at it again and again, and an image flashed across his mind. He looked at the wormhole-filled folder with shock. I think I've seen a similar list in the headmaster's office at Muyang High School before. He studied it closely and tried his best to remember. When he compared it to the donor's name, something even more shocking happened. It's the same. I've seen this list in the headmaster's office at Muyang High School before. Quote. To search for the old headmaster, he had entered Muyang High School many times. The 2-star scenario had been turned upside down, but he had not found the old headmaster. The world behind the door is weaved from the door pusher's memory, but this school is unique. It appears to be formed from the combined memory of everyone behind the door. Chen Ge held his chin lightly. Other than the old headmaster, everyone else is inside my haunted house. The fact that there is a donors list here means that the old headmaster is also inside the school, right? Chen Ge's eyes widened. He looked at the bookshelf that gave off the moldy smell, and the more he looked at it, the more familiar it felt. Could these things have been moved from Muyang High School? Could part of the two-star scenario be hidden here? Quote. Looks like the old headmaster and I are fated to meet. He placed the document back, and his expression was curious. Before the School of the Afterlife's trial mission is unlocked, there are 9 pre-missions. Could it be that these 9 pre-missions are related to the School of the Afterlife in some way? Mr. Bai, have you found anything? There are some discoveries, but we can't be sure yet. Chen Ge pulled out another damp file that was covered in mold. A report on the investigation of the campus's surroundings. Although it was called an archive room, it was more like a storage room for documents. There were all kinds of documents and materials, including graduation designs, reimbursement bills, club statistics, cafeteria purchase catalogs, and so on. Teacher Bai. Zhu Long found several crumpled newspapers from the corner of the room. He showed one of them to Chen Ge. Look at the article with the big picture in the middle. The school building caught fire for unknown reasons. Many students were trapped in the toilet. Firefighters rushed into the fire to rescue them. This report was placed in the middle of the newspaper. It was very eye-catching. Looking at the layout and content, the person who wrote this article should be quite young. Chen Ge accepted the newspaper. It was covered in mold, and there were large stains on it. Many parts of it were blurry. This looks like the school's newspaper. Muyang High School was just a private welfare organization. It did not have the ability to create a school newspaper. Chen Ge flipped through the few newspapers and found a familiar name, Western Zhejiang Private Academy. This name had appeared many times, and many of the articles were centered around Western Zhejiang Private Academy. Isn't Western Zhejiang Private Academy the school where Zhang Ya studied? At that abandoned school, Chen Ge had his first date with a red specter. It was also at that school that he had walked into Zhang Ya's heart. There was a fire at Western Zhejiang Private Academy. Now that he thought about it, he remembered seeing the burnt banister at the education block. This is strange. Not only Western Zhejiang Private Academy, including Muyang High School, the other abandoned schools that I've been to all have traces of fire. He read the newspaper that Zhu Long had given him again. At the time, the firemen had saved 6 people from the toilet on the top floor. The newspaper had praised the firemen as heroes, and the whole article was filled with praise. However, he also saw an article in the corner that called for people to learn about fire prevention during the summer. It mentioned that a student had died in the fire. The fire started from the toilet, but how could it have started inside the toilet? The fire started after the students had finished their night study session, so why were the students inside the toilet on the top floor? Quote. Combining the several articles, Chen Ge acutely noticed the problem. The fire started on the 4th floor. At the time, there were only students inside the toilet. The firemen saved 6 people, but there was 1 student who died in the fire. In other words, there should have been 7 people inside the toilet at the time. As for the cause of the fire, it was impossible to tell. There was no record of it in the files, and the student who died in the fire appeared to have become a taboo. Something like this has happened at Western Zhejiang Private Academy. But when I went there, I didn't feel anything off. Chen Ge was confused. If the door to the toilet was pushed open by the student who died in the fire, then he should be the door pusher at Western Zhejiang Private Academy, but the reason Western Zhejiang Private Academy is able to become a 3-star scenario is all because of Zhang Ya. Now that Western Zhejiang Private Academy had become a part of the haunted house, Chen Ge was certain that Zhang Ya was the scariest presence at that school. All 3-star scenarios have a door, but even though Western Zhejiang Private Academy is a 3-star scenario, it doesn't have a door. Chen Ge looked at his shadow and repeated the name in his heart. He repeated it, but there was no response. The reason Western Zhejiang Private Academy is given a 3-star scenario by the black phone is all because of Zhang Ya. Based on my knowledge, Zhang Ya hasn't pushed open any of the doors. When I went to Western Zhejiang Private Academy, I didn't see any doors. Chen Ge slowly put down the newspaper, and the image of the red dress appeared in his mind. Zhang Ya, the door that should exist but has disappeared, the door pusher, these 3 terms formed a line in Chen Ge's mind, and he suddenly thought of a possibility. His eyes widened, and Chen Ge sucked in a cold breath. Could the door pusher at Western Zhejiang Private Academy have been consumed by Zhang Ya? That was the only explanation that could explain why Zhang Ya was so different from the others and why she was so powerful. After the door pusher is consumed, what will happen to the door? Chen Ge speculated. Due to her obsession, Zhang Ya didn't become the door pusher. The door without the door pusher should have slowly gone out of control like the door in Liwan City, but that didn't happen. The door will only appear next to the despairing children. Wait a minute. Could it be looking for a new door pusher? Quote. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Chen Ge was shocked by his own thought. An ownerless door, searching for despairing children, spending years to turn itself into a 4-star scenario. That sounded too unbelievable. Chen Ge forced himself to calm down. There are 13 easels in the art room, and there are 13 painters. They know the school's secret. The upside down in blood means that they are probably the 13 candidates that the door has found for itself. A single person would not be able to sustain a 4-star scenario unless the person was more powerful than a red spectre. However, if there were multiple red specters working together, no one could tell what would happen. After all, even Chen Ge himself had not seen so many red specters together before. 13, this number sure is unlucky. Chen Ge glanced at Zhou Tu. He had been searching for the art club, and he had even dreamt about the art room. This person should be one of the 13 painters. The door probably has its own selection criteria. Zhang Ju obviously did not fit the criteria, but Zhou Tu did. Initially, Chen Ge did not have high expectations for the art room, but after some analysis, he changed his mind. Zhou Tu's memory is the key. Of the club members, Zhou Tu was the most unique one. Chen Ge had to prepare for 2 possibilities. Zhou Tu's awakening memory would tell him everything, or Zhou Tu would become his enemy after he awakened his memory. This is a big fish. Was I too casual with him earlier? Chen Ge stared at Zhou Tu, and his gaze caused the latter to shiver. Mr. Bai, I'll go take a look over there. Zhou Tu found a random excuse and ran to the deepest part of the archive room. Why are you running? I'm the one who should be afraid. Chen Ge continued to search the room. The surprises that the archive room had given him were far from over. Soon, Chen Ge found a few more fire reports in the room. Fire seemed to have a special meaning at this school. It symbolized destruction and rebirth. There was a fire at Muyang High School, and there were burn marks on the stairs. The school used to be a crematorium, and now there's a fire at Western Zhejiang Private Academy. Is this a coincidence, or is there a deeper reason? Other than the report on the fire, Chen Ge also found several well-preserved student records at the bottom of the metal cabinet. 2 of them were very special. One of the files had Lin Cici's name on it, along with comments from his teachers and classmates. The students did not want to be friends with him, and the teachers could not be bothered to care about him. This child did not have a mother, and his father was a murderer. He had been adopted since he was young, but for some reason, he had escaped from his foster home many times. In his opinion, the only person in the world who would sincerely help him was an intern in the orphanage. That university graduate had helped Lin Cici finish primary school even though he didn't have a stable life. He had even attended Lin Cici's parent-teacher conference. According to the teacher's comments, Lin Cici's ADHD only improved when the intern was around. The file did not have Lin Cici's picture or personal information, but there was a handwritten signature, Gu Yujia. The whole file was rotten and filled with wormholes. Only the spot where the guardian's signature was clean. Gu Yujia, Zhejiang's children's home. If I can leave this place alive, I should pay it a visit. Chen Ge seemed to be talking to himself, but it also sounded like he was purposely talking to someone else. He turned to look at the other file that he had picked out. This file was dated earlier than the others. There was no name on it, and there was no record. There was only one sentence. Endure it, endure it. Everything will get better. They won't bully me forever. One day, I will grow up. The handwriting on the file was crooked. It did not look like it had been written by a teacher. It looked more like it had been written by a child when his hand was injured. Endless tolerance will only make the perpetrator worse, no matter what the situation is. Those who seek pleasure from violence will not have sympathy or self-reflection. Chen Ge used Lin Cici's phone to snap a picture and then placed the file back where it was. The earliest file should be left behind by the real door pusher. After he pushed open the door, his personality might have changed drastically, and he might have gone to the other extreme. If the door pusher that Zhongya consumed was him, then after he died, the door that he pushed open might still be doing things according to his will. If I want to increase the chance of survival behind the door, I'd better follow his will. School violence had never happened to Chen Ge before. The closest he had been to school violence was probably when he was in primary school. The teacher had the children bring the toys that they did not normally play with to school to donate to the children's home. After everyone had donated, only Chen Ge held his bag and did not say anything. The naughtiest children in the class started to fight over Chen Ge's bag. In the process, they broke the zipper of the bag. In the end, a bloody intestine and a bag full of broken fingers spilled out. The lifelike severed finger rolled around the classroom like a piece of chalk. The bloody plastic intestine even bounced a few times on the desk. The students in the class and the teacher who was walking over were all dumbfounded. When the vice headmaster came, he purposely asked the homeroom teacher, "What is this child's family background?" That evening, Chen Ge's parents were called to school and then they were taken away by the police for a long time. Speaking of which, Chen Ge was the only student who had been bullied at school, and his parents were interrogated by the police. However, there was a bright side to it. At least from then on, no one dared to bully Chen Ge anymore. Never bow to school violence. There was another meaning to what Chen Ge said. At this school, some of the victims had become a new source of violence. The school of the afterlife continued to expand. The door that was not dyed red by blood would approach all the despairing children and turn them into a part of the door. Their nightmares would reappear behind the door, and their souls would be used as bricks to build a tomb that would bury reality. After searching for a long time in the archive room, a familiar stench drifted to his nose. Chen Ge decisively led the other members to leave the office. "Sir, we're lucky. The monsters with the stench didn't come to us until the end," Zhu Long said softly. "It's not that we're lucky. Someone helped us lure the monsters away." Chen Ge was not sure whether it was Chong Ji-yu who was helping him or not, but he knew something was happening at this school, and it was probably related to Chong Ji-yu and his sister. "Come on, we'll go to the lab building next." Chen Ge turned to Zhou Tu. "You should have made your decision, right?" Memory was something hard to describe. It was like snow that would never melt, but it was also like the fleeting light. Those who wished to grasp it could not grasp it, and those who wished to forget it could not forget it. Zhou Tu had been troubled by that dream for a long time. He knew that he was different, but he could not believe it. In the end, he sank into deep self-doubt. Until that day, he met Chen Ge. This man was the first person to affirm Zhou Tu's identity. His dreams were all real, and everything that he had experienced was not fake. They were memories that could not be erased from the deepest part of his mind. Zhou Tu had obtained the answer that he wanted, but at the same time, he had landed himself in a whirlpool of danger. He did not know if following Chen Ge would lead to his death or salvation. "Have you made up your mind?" Chen Ge stood before Zhou Tu and repeated. If you really can't make up your mind, you can go and see him." Zhang Ju and Wang Yicheng suddenly walked over. They stood on the left and right, sandwiching Zhou Tu in the middle. "Zhu Long, come over here." Zhu Long, who walked at the back, did not look right. His gaze was strange, like it was on fire, and he was at the edge of madness. "What did you do to him?" Chen Ge looked at Zhu Long's left hand. The hand that held the phone was pulsing with veins. "We found a broken news report in the archive room. A delivery man who often wandered around the university went missing. After several days of investigation, the police found a body that was no longer recognizable as a human body inside the morgue." Zhang Ju handed the badly damaged newspaper to Chen Ge. The body that was no longer recognizable was him, Zhu Long. The fake memory was shattered, and when Zhu Long saw the newspaper, he was reminded of many things. Studying hard and finally getting into university was just his dream. The reality was so cold that it was hard to look at it. The girl that he liked excelled in her studies and got into the best medical university. His grades were a mess, and he could not even afford the tuition to repeat his studies. His family was broke, and the only family member he had was seriously ill. His health was deteriorating. Fate hit him head on, but it did not break him. He began to learn how to take care of others and support the family by himself. When he was looking for a job, others felt that he looked listless, so he cut his messy long hair. Others felt that his tattoos would scare the customers, so he took a knife and shaved off a layer of his skin bit by bit. He was not defeated, and finally found a job that belonged to him, a courier. He was diligent and friendly, with a stubborn look in his eyes and a smile on his face. He did his best to survive, relying on his own efforts to gain respect and material security. After the most difficult summer vacation, he had gotten used to this job. He worked until late every day, and the only fun he had was to take some orders that were sent to Zhejiang Medical University. Every time he entered the campus, there was a trace of expectation in his heart. He knew that the girl was in this school. Even if he only took a peek at her from afar, he would feel very satisfied and happy for the whole day. The school was not big, but it was not small either. It was hard to tell when he would run into her again. He had imagined the scene of their meeting countless times in his mind, but when the girl really appeared, he realized that all the preparations and rehearsals were useless. He was so nervous that he couldn't speak, like a child whose secret had been discovered. After that day, they exchanged contact information. The girl was surprisingly proactive. She liked the feeling of control, but Zhu Long mistook it for admiration. In exchange for his obedience, it was a kind of mental devastation. The girl loved to torture Zhu Long. She would constantly remind Zhu Long that he was nothing. The pride that he had worked so hard for was slowly crushed. Zhu Long became a puppet in the girl's hands, and the scariest thing was that Zhu Long did not realize it. He was a simple-minded kid. He was no match for the girl who was an expert in anatomy and criminal psychology. He was like a lamb that had been plucked clean, placed naked on the woman's plate, waiting to be slaughtered. In the end, this kind of damage extended from the mental level to the physical level. It was not until death came that Zhu Long realized it, but it was too late. Blood leaked out from the wounds. Zhu Long held the pink phone and stared at the newspaper that Chen Ge was holding. The floodgates of his memory were finally blasted open after repeated stimulation. Do you know which part of a human's body is pink? The blood vessels were like threads, stitching up the skin. Zhu Long walked toward Chen Ge step by step. When the wound is about to heal, the skin is the most tender. She likes pink. Zhu Long's body started to shift. There were many stitches on his body. It was hard to imagine what had happened to him after his death. Another half-red specter. Chen Ge's eyes were strangely calm. When Zhu Long was 2 steps away from him, he raised his arms and hugged Zhu Long lightly. I want you to understand one thing. No matter when, no matter what reason, anything that hurts you should not be allowed, even if it is in the name of love. Looking at the boy who was inches away from him, Chen Ge's heart ached. He patted Zhu Long on his shoulder. I don't know what you're thinking now, but I can promise you that if we can leave this school, I will let you see that girl again. The blood threads that moved through Zhu Long's body suddenly stopped. Zhu Long looked at Chen Ge and then slowly lowered his head. It's a promise. Holding the pink phone, Zhu Long silently retreated to stand behind Chen Ge. Zhu Long and Zhang Ju's clothes were still turning red. Even if they were not red specters, they were the top half red specters. Including Wang Yicheng, Chen Ge estimated that he would not be that afraid of a normal red specter. We can go to the lab building now. Chen Ge did not ask Zhou Tu anymore. He had gotten the answer from the boy's eyes. When the boy saw Zhu Long, his nails dug into his flesh. He probably had an unfulfilled wish, but he had forgotten what that wish was. Walking through the bush, Chen Ge led the members to the lab building. This was his second visit that night. The red specter should still be in the duty room. If we run into him, we can return his clothes. Chen Ge sounded more confident now. He led the students to stop outside the building. This building is the nest of the upside-down monsters. The art club that we're going to is on the 4th floor. After we're done with that room, whether Zhou Tu's memory has awakened or not, we have to leave immediately. Chen Ge walked to the window of one of the rooms on the 1st floor. Now, come up with me. The students looked at each other, and then they saw Chen Ge easily climb to the 2nd floor. I told you, he has to be a physical education teacher. Zhang Ju, Zhu Long, and Wang Yicheng's memory had awakened. For specters, climbing a building was nothing. Only Zhou Tu looked troubled. Quick, it's very dangerous inside the building. This is the safest route. Chen Ge was very experienced. He avoided the rooms that might be dangerous and soon reached the 3rd floor. Stepping on the air conditioner, Chen Ge half squatted outside the building, waiting for Zhou Tu, who was struggling to climb up. The secret is about to be revealed. The key is on its way. When Zhou Tu enters the art room, everything will be answered. Zhou Tu should have been a very obedient child. He lived within the rules set by his teachers and parents and never stepped out of line. He was well protected from harm, and of course, he did not get to see the scenery that only bad kids would get to see. When he reached the third floor, Zhou Tu's arms started to shake. He did not dare look down, and his face was pale. "Sir, have we arrived? We're on the fourth floor." His hands gripping the edge of the window, Chen Ge climbed to the art room on the fourth floor and looked through the gap. The art room that had changed earlier had returned to normal, but the blood on the oil paintings had become brighter like they had just been painted, and the paint was still wet. The window was too narrow, and it was very dangerous for one person to stand on it. Chen Ge was worried that Zhou Tu might go crazy when he saw the oil paintings, so after ensuring that it was safe, he signaled for Zhou Tu to crawl toward the room next to the art room. "You go up first. Don't be afraid, I'll be behind you." The fourth floor was very high. The night breeze caressed his body. Zhou Tu nodded with difficulty and climbed in the direction that Chen Ge had pointed. After Zhou Tu entered the room, Chen Ge called for the other members to enter as well. 1, 2, 3, 4. Other than Zhou Tu, there were 4 other figures that had entered the fourth floor. "There's one more." Chen Ge was the last to jump into the room. He looked around with a frown. The room was not big, and there were only a few members inside. "When you came in, did you notice anything strange?" "I didn't see anything that was obviously wrong, but when I got close to this building, I felt very uncomfortable, and now that I'm here, the feeling only intensified." Once Zhongju opened his mouth to speak, the scar on his face started to wiggle like a snake. He seemed to be very anxious. Zhongju's shirt was almost completely dyed red. He was only one step away from becoming a red specter. The fact that he felt so unsettled when he was so close to the building meant that there was probably more than one red specter hiding inside the building. This place was more dangerous than Chen Ge had imagined. Coupled with the fact that there was an additional figure, he became even more cautious. "After we go to the oil painting room, regardless of whether Zhou Tu has regained his memory or not, we have to leave," Chen Ge said. He only left the room after everyone agreed. The corridor on the fourth floor had not changed much since the last time he came here. It was gloomy and oppressive, as if it had not been used for many years. "Zhou Tu, the art club that you're looking for is on the fourth floor, and the scene that you dreamt of is in the room next door." As soon as Chen Ge arrived at the corridor, he smelled a faint stench. He knew very well that at this moment, the corridor was filled with those upside-down monsters. He had not attracted their attention yet, but the longer he dragged this out, the higher the chance of him being exposed. This time, Chong Ji-yu might not show up, so he had to end this as soon as possible. "Stop looking around and go. Aren't you supposed to go to the art club? Push open that door, and the memory from your dream will be awakened." Chen Ge had already wasted a lot of time at the school. The longer he stayed there, the less sense of security he felt. Chonggu's appearance gave him a new hope to break through his current predicament. "Is it here?" Zhou Tu walked out of the room and stopped at the door. He held the doorknob, but he did not have the courage to push it open. "Why are you hesitating? The answer you're looking for is behind the door. No matter the result, as long as you want to regain your memory, do not hesitate. Push it open." Chen Ge had lost his patience. The additional figure seemed to have disappeared, and the stench in the corridor thickened. The anxiety in his heart intensified. Zhou Tu was the last member to regain his memory. He had seen how everyone looked after they regained their memory, and he knew how painful it was. Therefore, the pressure that he faced was the greatest. To live in a false dream or to continue the painful memory, everyone had a different choice, and Zhou Tu was caught in a dilemma. Gritting his teeth, his chest rose, and the veins on his arms popped. Finally, he pushed the door open. Bang! Due to the force, the door knocked into the wall with a soft thud. The members of the Supernatural Phenomenon Research Club surrounded the door, and their eyes peered into the room. "This looks like a normal art room. Even though it looks bloody, there is no smell of blood in the room. The red should be oil paint. Are these paintings painted by students? Why would they paint these things?" Quote. The members chimed in, and they were all curious about the art room. Only Chen Ge and Zhou Tu did not say anything. Chen Ge had been here once before, so he was able to maintain his composure. Zhou Tu, on the other hand, seemed to be so shocked that he forgot to speak. "Don't just stand there in the corridor. It won't be good if someone sees us. Chen Ge signaled for the members to enter the room while he walked at the back. Mr. Bai, hearing Chen Ge's voice, Zhou Tu seemed to wake up from a dream. He pointed at the art room, and his face was filled with disbelief. This is the scene from my dream. I know. When I first heard you say it, I was very shocked, and that's why I agreed. Chen Ge had a smile on his face. He was like a big brother who could accept everything. Go in and take a look. Look at your past, think about your original intention. No matter what choice you make, I hope you can remember one thing, we are not enemies. Zhou Tu might be a red specter, so Chen Ge had to be prepared to ensure that he would not lose. Entering the art room, everything was red. The walls were red, the floor was red, the oil paintings were red, and even the stains that could not be cleaned were dark red. This was a red world, like a living hell, but it was filled with elegance. Zhou Tu looked at the 13 easels in the middle of the room. His eyes scanned the easels one by one before stopping on the 4th easel. I've definitely been to this art room before. I'm very familiar with this path. Zhou Tu slowly walked to the side of the 4th easel. When he saw the painting on the easel, his body completely froze. Zhou Tu. No matter how the others called him, he did not respond. A trace of red appeared in his eyes like his soul had been sucked into the painting. I see it. The me in the painting is crying to me. The you in the painting. Chen Ge leaned over. He had seen all 13 paintings in the art room, and he had some impression of the 4th painting. Was this painted by you? Zhou Tu did not speak. His soul seemed to be sucked into the painting, and his eyes were glued to the canvas. The 4th painting was the painting of this art room. The upper half showed the 13 painters sitting on the chairs, painting, and the lower half of the painting was a sea of blood. The 13 painters had died in different ways, and they had died on their chairs. It was worth noting that in the upper half of the painting, the painters had painted how they had died. These painters already knew what had happened to them, but they did not choose to change it. Instead, they recorded everything perfectly. When Chen Ge first came to the art room, he had stayed beside this painting for a long time. He did not expect this painting to be painted by Zhou Tu. Upon closer inspection, one would notice that the 4th artist in the painting looked very similar to Zhou Tu. The other paintings are trying their best to depict the inverted world, but this painting depicts the painter himself. Chen Ge did not disturb Zhou Tu. His eyes moved between the painting and Zhou Tu. What has Zhou Tu experienced? Why are his paintings so different from the others? Quote. Of the 13 painters, Zhou Tu was the 4th. He was not the most experienced, but he had the most unique perspective. Different from how he looked when the others woke up, Zhou Tu stood blankly next to the easel. There was no change to his body, but the atmosphere in the art room was changing subtly. The feeling was indescribable. It was like all the people in the painting had opened their eyes, and they were being watched by many eyes. Why do I suddenly feel cold? Wang Yicheng shrunk his neck and hid behind Zhang Ju. He looked around blankly, and there was a trace of fear in his eyes. Zhou Tu. Zhang Ju also had a bad feeling. He patted Zhou Tu's shoulder lightly. His eyelashes fluttered, and Zhou Tu's body seemed to have frozen. His eyes reflected the whole art room, and there was no blood on his face. Am I already dead? A hoarse voice squeezed out from his lips. As he spoke, the 4th painter on the scroll suddenly moved. The painter, who was sitting on the chair, suddenly dropped the paintbrush in his hand and grabbed his neck with both hands. His legs kept kicking as if there was an invisible rope around his neck. His eyeballs were about to pop out of his eye sockets. He struggled with all his might, but his body slowly left the seat. His head was filled with blood, and his expression was distorted. Gradually, he became like himself in the painting. What was even more terrifying was that in the lower half of the oil painting, Zhou Tu, who was in the blood-red world, slowly revealed a smile. Zhou Tu. Your neck. Wang Yicheng pointed at Zhou Tu's neck and shouted. Standing outside the oil painting, Zhou Tu's body was slowly becoming the same as the one in the oil painting. A purplish black mark appeared on his neck, and as time passed, the color of the mark continued to deepen. His neck became deformed, and there was a dripping sound in his ears. Following the sound, Chen Ge realized that in the lower half of the 4th oil painting, Zhou Tu, who had died a horrible death inside the red world, had somehow come back to life. He was covered in blood, and he was lying under the canvas. His face was pressed tightly against the canvas, and his lips were split open. Blood was dripping down his face. The bulging eyeballs stared at Zhou Tu, who was standing outside the oil painting, through the canvas. It looked like it was going to crawl out of the painting and drag Zhou into it. "Mr. Bai, should we take Zhou and leave?" The sound of dripping increased, and it came from all corners of the classroom. Turning to look, the few members from the Supernatural Phenomenon Research Club realized that all the people in the painting room were acting strangely. The people inside the paintings were leaning against the frame, and they all looked like they were ready to crawl out. "Last time when I came here with the shadow, this didn't happen. Is it because they sensed Zhou?" Reality once again proved that Zhou was different. Chen Ge signaled for the other members to get closer to Zhou. If there was a problem, they were to forcibly take Zhou away. The blood on the oil painting became brighter, and a red mist leaked out. The smell of blood thickened. "This doesn't look good." Zhangju and Zhu Long stood next to Zhou. They realized that the blood mist in the room had started to gather toward Zhou like a man eating flour with its mouth open. These things are trying to enter Zhou's body. The blood mist avoided the others and stuck to Zhou's body, gathering more and more. "Mr. Bai, we can't wait any longer. We need to leave now." To prevent Zhou from being consumed by the blood mist, Zulong reached out to grab Zhou's arm in a hurry. He had good intentions, wanting to drag Zhou out from the center of the blood mist, but who knew that the moment he exerted force, the blood mist would instantly condense into a rope as thick as a wrist, wrapping around Zhou's neck and hanging him in the center of the room. Zhou, with the rope formed from blood vessels around his neck, Zhou swayed in the room like a pendulum. He looked exactly like himself in the painting. He had already seen his own death and had completely recorded the scene of his tragic death. "I painted my own death with my own hands. I watched myself being hung to death, watched myself lose my breath." The atmosphere in the room became more oppressive. More blood seeped out from the painting. The people in the painting looked at Zhou, who was hanging in the middle of the room, and they all started to celebrate. Hanging is different from other ways of dying. It's not like stabbing the heart with a knife. After a short period of numbness, the body will feel like it's being burned, and the pain will spread from the wound. This is a very gentle way of dying. The energy will be drained, the oxygen will slowly decrease, and the despair will slowly increase. You can feel the process of your own death very clearly. Quote. The male voice came from a corner of the room. It sounded like it was coming from the painting on the wall or from the gap between the wall and the floor. Chen Ge could not tell where the voice came from, but he could tell that the person who spoke in the art room was the same person who had spoken in the toilet on the top floor of the education block. "There is no need to fear death. I know you will return. No matter how many times you escape, you will always be a member of this place." The voice seemed to be talking to Zhou, but it was impossible to tell where the owner of the voice came from. If one listened closely, they would realize that the voice was coming from Zhou's own lips. "Do not resist. Your mission has been completed. Sit quietly in your seat and wait for the last painter to enter the room." The blood mist swallowed Zhou, and his appearance became scarier. His body thinned at a visible rate. While everyone's attention was on Zhou, a 14th easel had appeared in the oil painting room without anyone noticing. The blood mist drifted to the 14th easel, and it left a faded red on the canvas that was as smooth as human skin. From afar, it looked like a dress dyed with blood. Not only Zhou, the first 13 easels in the middle of the art room started to change. Blood spread across the canvas, and the original upside-down painting started to change. The normal half was swallowed by blood, and screams and wails came from the canvas. "Mr. Bai, what's going on?" The paintings in the art room were split into two halves. The upper half was the same as in real life, but the lower half was a sea of blood. When the blood started to spread, the blood figures in the lower half of the painting all crawled to the other side of the painting, following the blood. They used various methods to kill their normal selves with the help of the tools in the painting. The upside-down world was destroyed, and strangely enough, more blood vessels came out from the bodies of the people who were killed in the painting. They all rushed toward the 14th easel. The picture on the canvas became clearer. The red dress appeared to be some kind of taboo, and it needed everyone's blood to make her appear. Bang! The pale-faced Zhou was tossed to the ground by the blood vessels. His body was highly deformed like a sponge that had been squeezed too hard. The blood fog that surrounded him thickened, and it slowly drifted toward the 14th easel. The woman's dress was drawn by the blood. It was vivid like a floating sea of blood. Wailing faces were imprinted on the dress. She stepped on the screaming souls, like a flower blooming in the depths of despair. Compared to everything around her, she stood out from the crowd. Standing inside the cage filled with curses and negative emotions, the red dress was the brightest red in the world. This painting. As the blood vessels gathered, the 14th painting became clearer. A toppled study table, a shattered mirror, and she stood barefoot in the middle of the abandoned school. The blood-red dress stuck to her body. She raised her snow-white neck, and she looked like a blood-red swan. The painting only showed the woman's back. Using everything from the previous 13 paintings, they had only managed to draw out her back. Standing before the paintings, Chen Ge could not help but walk toward the 14th painting. He was very sure that the woman in the painting was Zhang Ya. Everyone is here. The people I've saved, the people who've saved me, the people I've killed, the people who've killed me, they've all gathered here. The man's voice rang out again. When he said the first sentence, he still sounded like a man, but as he spoke, his voice became more and more neutral. This voice seemed to be formed from many voices, but most of the time, it was the man's voice that dominated. Who are you? How do you know what she looks like? Chen Ge stood next to the 14th painting. Where is she? Quote. Zhang Ya was sleeping inside his shadow. Chen Ge was worried that the enemy would use this opportunity to harm Zhang Ya. After all, there might be a greater red specter at this school. There was no response. The voice slowly disappeared amid the dripping of blood. All the paintings in the oil painting room were covered in blood. Rationality and art had been destroyed by violence, leaving only patches of blood stains. Why is the 14th painting Zhang Ya? Is this part of their plan? In the 4-star scenario, Chen Ge appeared so small. Even with so many members around him, he was still very anxious, but he hid it well. Before there was a conclusion, Chen Ge would never expose his real thoughts, but this time, it was different. When he saw the enemy draw Zhang Ya, his heart jumped. The school of the afterlife is related to Zhang Ya. This time, Zhang Ya is not a trump card but a chess piece on the board. Quote. The 14 paintings represented 14 people. One of them had Lin Cici's signature, and another had Zhou Tu's death. Chen Ge had met some of the owners of the paintings before, and he had probably run into some of them at this school. They were both competitors and partners. In order to achieve their ultimate goal, everyone would do anything. The rule of the school of the afterlife is substitution and escape. The person who bears the hatred of the whole door will be chosen from these 14 painters. Chen Ge had no idea what he was facing. Everyone at the school was looking for a scapegoat, so he suspected that the school's owner had the same plan. After all, the door pusher had been consumed by Zhang Ya, so technically, the so-called owner was just a substitute. The 4-star scenario is huge, and it's still expanding. To carry this kind of door, one will have to endure unimaginable negative emotions. The oil painting room was located at the deepest part of the corridor of the lab building. The abnormality here was slowly spreading across the entire floor. Bright red oil paint seeped into the walls, and blood vessels crawled along the walls like some kind of extremely powerful plant that grew rapidly by feeding on the nutrients of dead bodies. The people in the paintings were bleeding, and they slapped the canvas hard. Their expressions were scary, but they were unable to escape from the paintings. Go, quick! Zhou Tu, who was as thin as a stick, woke up. He raised his bony arm and grabbed at Zhang Ju. It's starting. The painters are starting. Painters. Zhang Ju was sure that this was the first time he had heard this name, but for some reason, when he heard this name, his body started to shake instinctively. A top-half red specter was shaking just because he heard a name. This was unimaginable for Chen Ge. Let's leave this place first. Chen Ge signaled for Zhang Ju and Zhu Long to bring Zhou Tu. He was the first to rush to the art room. When he pulled the door open, a gust of foul odor and chill rushed into the room, causing Chen Ge to involuntarily take several steps back. He looked closer and saw a man in a red uniform standing outside. His upper body was tilted, and he was still leaning against the door to eavesdrop. A red specter. When Chen Ge first entered the lab building, he had run into this red specter, but he had been lucky and escaped. Are you one of the school's workers? It's not safe here. If you want to talk to us, we can go somewhere else. Chen Ge tried to communicate with the man, but before he finished, the smell of blood drifted over from behind him. Be careful. Zhang Ju and Zhu Long stood on either side of Chen Ge. Each of them was standing on a ghost face. Lowering his head to look, Chen Ge realized that the red specter outside the door seemed to have a hobby of collecting human faces. On the ground around him were many bleeding human faces. Ding dong ding dong. The sound of metal clanking came from the red specter's waist. His red uniform was blown open by the wind, revealing the various autopsy tools hidden underneath. The bleeding human faces were like deflated balloons. They were wrinkled and stuck to the ground. If not for Zhu Long and Zhang Ju, these things would have crawled onto Chen Ge's body already. Looks like this brother does not wish to have a proper conversation with us. Blood was spreading inside the art room. Chen Ge stood behind Zhu Long and Zhang Ju and used his yin-yang vision to study the red specter before him. Blood splattered, and the red specter fluttered. Various torture devices hung from his skin. With every step he took, pieces of human faces would fall from his shirt. There were different levels of red specters. Unfortunately, the red specter that Chen Ge's group had encountered belonged to the extremely dangerous category. However, this was what confused Chen Ge the most. Zhang Ju and Zhu Long did not show any fear when facing a red specter like this. They were different from Xu Yin, who had lost his mind and fought for his life. Zhu Long and Zhang Ju were very rational. Their expressions were calm, like there was a voice in their mind telling them that there was no need to be afraid. When the red specter saw Zhu Long and Zhang Ju, he did not make his move immediately. He slowly raised his head, and his whole face was covered by his wet hair. Chen Ge could see a face covered with black veins through the gaps of the hair. It was pale and sickly, and it appeared to be smiling. Tick-tock. A middle-aged man's face slid down the red specter's sleeve and fell between him and Chen Ge. "Save me, this demon who likes to flay people, save." Pa. Before the middle-aged man could finish, a blood-stained shoe landed heavily on his face. His words were forcefully cut off, and his whole face was torn into pieces. The room was very quiet, and because of the silence, the sound of blood dripping was especially clear. The blood color on the anti-smash-proof shoe deepened. The original color was covered, as if the shoe itself was blood red. "Let's move away. His target is not us." The weak Zhou Tu raised his head to look at the red specter. His eyes did not waver. He stayed here to wait for this day. He wanted to be the first to see the scenario inside the art room because he is both the manager and a participant. Participant. He is the author of the sixth painting, the monster that connects the two inverted worlds. When Zhou Tu said that, he kept his eyes on the red specter. His memory had awakened. Even though he was weak, there was a unique presence about him. The red specter at the door did not get angry from being called a monster. In fact, he seemed to like the title. The sound of footsteps echoed in the art room. The red specter brushed past Chen Ge, leaving behind a pool of blood as she walked to the center of the art room. Finally, he stopped beside the sixth painting and looked at the oil painting that had changed beyond recognition. Chen Ge vaguely remembered the content of the sixth painting. A person was carrying a big mirror in the dance studio, but he slipped and fell, and the mirror broke. The ground was littered with broken mirror fragments, and each fragment reflected a blood-red human face. "Don't worry about him. Let's go." Zhou Tu was supported by Wang Yicheng as they walked out the door. Chen Ge didn't want to fight this monster for the time being, so he followed the other members and escaped downstairs. "Are we still going to jump out the window?" Wang Yicheng pulled open the door to the classroom next door. The mannequins that were covered by the white cloth started to move, and droplets of blood silently appeared under the white cloth. Most of the painting materials and props inside the lab were made by that madman. Zhou Tu's face was still pale, and it did not improve after leaving the art room. Including the red paint and the smelly canvas. Without Zhou Tu's explanation, everyone understood how the painting materials were made. Have so many people died at this abandoned school? Chen Ge was confused. "I saw several storerooms on the fourth floor, and they were all filled with painting materials. I do know many things, but that doesn't mean I know everything." Zhou Tu's attitude toward Chen Ge was very strange. Compared to before, it was neither good nor bad, but there was a trace of wariness in his tone. Suddenly, a loud noise came from the art room behind them. The group turned to look, and the red monster's spine was fully open. His back was swollen, and the ribs stretched out to the sides. A cruel tool dangled from each of the ribs. He stood with his back to the door, and he seemed to be using the tools he had on him to modify the painting. "Stay away from him." Zhou Tu had Wang Yicheng open the window and led him down. The glass window was pushed open, and Zhou Tu and Wang Yicheng left first. Chen Ge followed closely behind them, but when he stood next to the window, he was suddenly stunned. There was a person standing in the shadow at the southeastern corner of the lab building. He was wearing black leather shoes, and his face was pale. His eyes were dark, and he was holding a girl's nightdress and a dog collar in his arms. Mr. Bai. With his yin-yang vision, Chen Ge saw Mr. Bai at first glance, and he also saw the blood stain on the girl's nightdress. Something happened to his daughter. Mr. Bai, who was hiding in the shadow, also noticed Chen Ge. He seemed to have been waiting there for a long time, but he probably did not expect there to be someone else around Chen Ge, so he did not make a move. This is the real Mr. Bai. I've taken his ID and assumed his identity. It won't be good if my students find out about this. Chen Ge believed that Zhang Ju and the rest would be able to guess that he was not a teacher, but no one had pointed that out. At least on the surface, everyone was trying their best to maintain the stability of the club. I need to find a reason to kill him. There should be many people around me who are good at this. There was still a ghost hiding in Chen Ge's shadow. The ghost was the one with the least dignity, but now, he had become a chess piece in Chen Ge's hands. With the decision made, the way that Chen Ge looked at Mr. Bai softened. He moved faster, and in less than a minute, he reached the bottom of the building. Where is he? When his feet landed, Chen Ge turned to look at the corner of the lab building, but Mr. Bai had disappeared. What are you doing? Zhou Tu's voice dwindled like he could disappear at any moment. I don't have much time left. There are some things that I need to tell you. This is related to whether I can find myself or not, and it is related to each of your lives. Tell us, we're all listening. Zhang Ju and Zhu Long stood beside Chen Ge, and the few of them huddled together. The 13 paintings in the art room represent 13 people. Each of them is similar to the red specter that we encountered earlier. They are very scary. Zhou Tu sighed. After Wang Yicheng helped him back into the bush and away from the lab building, he continued. The order has nothing to do with power. It's completely random, but there is one exception. Exception. Number 1 is the exception. I have no memory of no. 1. I only know that he likes to draw, and he is an artist. Number 1 is very special. He is different from the others. He is the first student at this school. Zhou Tu's eyes scanned the other club members. In other words, he has a lot to do with the reason why this school is in its current state. When you mentioned the painter, I felt fear for no reason. Just those 2 words made my heart skip a beat. Zhang Ju's body was almost completely dyed red by blood. His face was like a melted candle, and he looked very scary. It's normal to be afraid because you must have met him before you turned into a monster. You are one of his creations. Zhou Tu accidentally revealed another secret. Everything that happened to you after you entered the door was planned by the painter, but there was a small accident. How do you know all this? Didn't you say you couldn't tell me anything about the painter? Quote. Because I am the same as you. To be precise, other than the painter himself, everyone else is his creation. Zhou Tu's words were laced with deep fear. You, me, Lin Sisi, Wang Yicheng, and everyone else at this school, we are all the painter's creations. From the moment we entered the door, we have been living in the painter's script. Quote. If it's really as you said, then why did the accident happen to Zhang Ju? Chen Ge did not fully believe Zhou Tu. It was not that he suspected Zhou Tu was lying to him, but there were things that Zhou Tu did not know, like the existence of Zhang Ya. It was Zhang Ya who consumed Western Zhujiang's private academy's door pusher. Therefore, no matter what, among the 14 scrolls, at least one person was not the painter's creation. The painter was too careless. He did not expect someone to make a different choice from him, and he did not expect someone to betray him right under his nose. Zhou Tu took a deep breath and turned his neck with difficulty to look at Zhang Ju. You should have heard the name Chang Wenyu before. Of course, she betrayed the promise. She removed my left eye and made me her scapegoat. Zhang Ju had a very bad impression of Chang Wenyu. She did not betray you but the painter. Zhou Tu's voice rose like he was using the last of his energy to defend Chang Wenyu. Chang Wenyu was the second person to enter this school, and she was the only one to successfully escape. What do you want to say? She used her actions to tell us one thing. Other than following the painter's instructions, there are other paths that we can take. The one we need to obey is not the painter but the real owner of this school. Veins popped on Zhou Tu's neck. His physical condition was worsening. Chen Ge had always been curious about the identity of the school's owner. After all, the owner might be someone beyond a red specter. Can you tell me who the real owner of this school is? Zhou Tu looked deeply into Chen Ge's eyes and said 2 words, we. Us. Indeed, all the despair of being bullied became the foundation of the school of the afterlife. After the young souls entered the door, they merged into a monster that kept growing. Zhou pointed at himself and then at the people around him. We are all inside this monster's body. We are all a part of this monster. This place carries our memories. It is our home and our bodies. Chen Ge understood what Zhou was trying to say. The owner of the school of the afterlife was not a person but a kind of consciousness. The door pusher had died, and there was no new door pusher to shoulder the negative emotions behind the door. The door continued to wander in similar despair, and in the end, the lingering spirits of despair started to take over the door. Chen Ge suddenly understood why the black phone called this school the school of the afterlife. The school of the afterlife itself was just a scenario, but under the influence of despair and negative emotions, the scenario itself possessed some kind of consciousness, so a door that could move freely appeared. The other doors were pushed open by the people in despair and were fixed somewhere in the blood world, but only this door would automatically appear next to the people in despair. It became the home for these despairing children to escape to. It took in these desperate souls, but from another perspective, it robbed them of their lives. That's not right, Chen Ge suddenly said. If entering the school means certain death, then how did Chong Wenyu escape the school? The children who enter this school should have different choices, and each choice corresponds to a different result. Quote. Even though I don't know why you're suddenly saying this, you're right. Zhou followed Chen Ge's words. The school has its own consciousness, and everyone who enters the school has their own choice. Different choices will lead to different results. Some will leave the school after experiencing pain and despair, some will merge with despair and become part of the school, some will give up everything, forget everything, and close their eyes. They have many choices, or at least, that is what I heard from Chong Wenyu. Quote. Based on what you said, this school is not bad, at least for those despairing children. The consciousness that forms the school is not wrong, the one who is wrong is the painter. He changed the rules of the school and cut off the way out, forcing everyone to stay. Zhou's voice grew louder, but his body was weakening. Why would the painter do that? Zhangju was confused. I don't know what he's thinking. I only know that someone once rebelled against the painter. Chong Wenyu succeeded, but the others and I failed. The skinny Zhou leaned on Zhangju. Whenever there's a problem in the oil art room, the painter will appear. He will be here soon. If you don't want to lose your memory again and turn into mindless dolls, you'd better figure out a way to leave. Is it too late to run now? Zhangju was pessimistic. We're facing the painter. The few of us probably don't even have the right to be his opponent. It'll be fine. Zhou forced a smile on his pale face. His thin finger reached toward Chen Ge. Chong Wenyu has returned. I can sense a familiar presence on him. On me. Chen Ge was surprised himself. Are you sure that's Chong Wenyu's presence? It's not the presence of another woman. Quote. I'm sure. Zhou did not understand the hidden meaning behind Chen Ge's words, and he nodded confidently. I've never met Chong Wenyu before. How could I have her presence on me? Chen Ge waved his hands. Perhaps you have something from her on you, or perhaps you're related to her by blood. Or perhaps you're lovers. Quote. Stop talking. Chen Ge gritted his teeth. I feel like I've been tricked. Zhou did not think it was a big deal that Chen Ge had Chong Wenyu's presence on him. He continued to persuade Chen Ge. We've all forgotten certain memories. Perhaps the secret is hidden in those lost memories. Don't worry too much. My instinct has always been accurate. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.